The diplomatic row between Kenya and Tanzania is threatening to hurt the region's economy. Now, what started as a restriction for tour operators between the two countries resulted in Tanzania restricting flight frequencies from Kenya to Dar es Salaam. Earlier on, I caught up with Waturi Matu, the East African Federation of Tourism coordinator, to get a better understanding of this dispute. Let's start with the cause of this, because we have had different episodes where Kenyans and Tanzanians don't seem to agree on several issues, but there has to be a root cause. What is it?
I think the root cause lies in the history of the old East Africa community and how it split and who was left with what sorts of assets. And I think that those undertones still exist. They're still there. There's still some bit of bitterness which can be wiped out by if our political leaders actually take an initiative to focus people's eyes on the current structure. If you look at it purely from a tourist perspective, Nairobi and Kenya was the hub for tourism in East Africa because of the advantage it had of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. So most tourists landed in Jomo Kenyatta Airport and went into Tanzania, went into Uganda. But when that community broke, that therefore it was necessary to create some sort of cooperation on how both parties, both countries would cooperate in terms of tourism, because they share an ecosystem and they also share mutual clients. So that gave rise to the 1985 bilateral agreement, and it made very clear on how both parties would operate. It created areas where it designated specific towns where tourists would be picked from. And that is why to date you will find that Kenya tour vans can cross the border in Namanga and drop off clients in Arusha, but beyond that they cannot go into the national parks. But when the new East Africa community was created and the East African Treaty was signed and the Common Market Protocol came into being, Kenya basically stopped following the bilateral agreement to the letter. So it opened up its national parks to Tanzania tour operators. It opened up the airport.
So was this informed by changing in that sort of trade, or what informed this?
I think the head of state at that particular time just, was very focused on regional integration. So whatever systems and structures were put in place to accommodate our partners within the five partner states. But that may not have necessarily happened in Tanzania, because Tanzania continued to hold on to the bilateral agreement that both parties signed to. And for a very long time, the Kenya tour operators felt that this bilateral agreement does not serve its purpose anymore. If we're in a common market, then we need to be cooperating. We need to see more free movement of services and persons. And then they started filing complaints. I'm told up to 10 years ago, that's the first time they requested to have free movement of services according to the East African Community Common Market Protocol. However, I think that was being handled by the Secretarial Council. This is the organ that deals with tourism matters within the East Africa community. And that matter had been on the agenda for the longest time. Until about 2013, July, when the Secretarial Council actually directed Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda to meet to iron out their issues. And the issues really had to do with this free movement of services. I think between Kenya and Uganda, they were quickly able to agree that the issue that was pending was how do you allow foreign commercial vehicles, tourist vehicles, into your national parks? Do they actually abide to, what laws do they follow? And our laws almost similar, and is it possible for us to mutually agree to recognize the other partner states' licensing procedures? So Kenya and Uganda were quickly able to accept, and that opened up the national parks and attractions to Uganda tour operators back and forth.
Waturi, this seems to be a very clear sort of issue that can easily be resolved, but we seem to be getting back and forth, and now But what comes out is there's a clear lack of honesty on both parts in regards to what they agreed to.
Yes. In this perspective is that I think when it got to a place where the Kenya side felt that they were not getting mutual benefits and that this bilateral agreement was no longer relevant, they asked for a review.
Right.
And actually, that meeting in particular asked for a review within 6 months, and nothing happened, you know. And as at February last year, both countries were in a meeting and agreed to go back and implement the bilateral agreement to the letter.
Right.
I think at the point at which they agreed and signed on the dotted line, maybe one party had not recognized what impact this would have on their tourism operations. And one of the immediate impacts is close access to the tourism national parks and attractions and the airport.
Right. So and this was obviously favoring Kenya.
Yeah, it was obviously not favoring Kenya, but it doesn't favor Kenya. But basically, that's how you've agreed to cooperate.
Right.
So until, and over a period of time, last year, it took time for even the Kenyan government to communicate to all arms that because of this bilateral agreement, therefore, we cannot allow access of Tanzanian vehicles into our national parks, into the airport.